Hello, this is Mike McMaster, recording a program for the Wood County Committee on the Aging, um, brought to you by the Wood County Museum. At the Wood County Museum right now is the new World War II in Wood County exhibit. I hope that you have a chance to come out, but if you do not, I will continue to be recording these programs. And the title of this program, The German Prisoner of War Camp in Bowling Green, Ohio, April through December 1945. It is not what you think. Now, where does this information come from? I had my best newspaper man researching the Bowling Green and Wood County newspapers, and he could find very little information. Probably during the war, the newspapers were not allowed to photograph or write stories about the prisoner of war camp. In 2018, a book was published by Dr. James Van Kuren, World War II POW camps in Ohio. And in that book, there is a very small section on the prisoner of war camp in Bowling Green, and we will find out why it was such a small part. Now, why were prisoner of war brought to Bowling Green? Because of that image right there, the Heinz tomato processing plant that was in Bowling Green at one time. There, at one time, prisoners of war, Italians, were bused from Camp Perry, the main prisoner of war camp in Northwest Ohio, all the way to Bowling Green, Ohio, and then under guard, driven all the way back to Camp Perry each night. Now, that is a lot of gas and tires and parts during the war when we are trying to ration everything that has to do with the automotive industry. So, and about one of the only articles that could be found came to us from the Sentinel Tribune, 3 March 1944, and it stated pretty much what I had said. There are 35 such Italian prisoners working on the Heinz farm. They are brought over from Camp Perry each morning by guard and returned there in the evening. Now, this is kind of a rough drawing that I made, showing a map of Bowling Green as it looks like today. Poe Road goes from the left of your screen to the right of your screen by the airport. Thurston Avenue goes from the bottom up to Poe Road. In the red is about where the Heinz factory was. In that yellow area about was where the Heinz greenhouses were at one time. We know that you plant tomatoes not from seeds, but from tiny tomato plants. They are fostered in greenhouses until they are ready to plant. Now, the Italian prisoner of war on their overalls wore patches similar to that, a small Italy patch and a much larger green patch for the back of their overalls. My brother actually has an Italy patch in his patch collection. Now, we do at the Wood County Museum have one artifact from an Italian prisoner of war. And as you can see in scene number 1, the Italian prisoner of war is loading the tiny tomato plants into a crate, and he spies a pretty girl. And in scene 2, he is leaning into the car while she is on her lunch break, and that is the most Italian-looking car ever, complete with raccoon tail. And in the background, the guard and the manager are losing their hats. In scene 3, he is being dragged from her car, and at the very end, he is forced to do work digging and shoveling as his punishment for speaking to that girl in her car. Now, later on, after the Italian prisoners of war and Italy was out of the war, the Italian prisoner of war were sent to places like the Rossford Ordnance Depot, where they could do more sensitive jobs to the war work, but were not deemed as a good threat. They did take an oath stating that they were out of the war as well. These Italians were replaced by German soldiers of war helping on the Heinz Company. They replaced the Italians who have been moved back from Camp Perry and taken back and forth daily. Now, that was June 1944 during the tomato season. Now, this is the birth of the prisoner of war camp in Bowling Green. It was the Ohio Agricultural Extension Office leases 22 acres from the city of Bowling Green, and the prisoner of war camp of Germans would be composed from 1 April 1945 and completed in 31 December 1945. This camp was made up of only tents. It had one canteen exchange in a tent, a kitchen with movable stoves in a tent, an infirmary, and the prisoners ate outside, although I suppose they could eat their lunches at the Heinz factory. Now, the German prisoners of war had overalls very similar to this. These are from another museum, not the Wood County Museum. Now, the camp housed, when it opened, 7 non-commissioned officers, 2 medics, sanitary personnel, and 395 German prisoners of war. They worked 8 or 9 hour shifts, 7 days a week, and at the height of this tomato season, the camp swelled to 600 prisoners of war living on that 22-acre leased prisoner of war camp. Now, these are German potato pickers in the state of Maine. This is from the Defense Department's archives showing German soldiers working in the field. This would have been a common sight in Wood County. Many people have told me that you could, so to speak, rent out the German prisoners of war to shuck corn or clear ditches, all under guard. Now, the Bowling Green camp was unoccupied on 16 November 1945. It was inspected, and the lease with the city of Bowling Green was terminated on 27 November 1945. That was the end of the prisoner of war camp in Bowling Green. Now, this is a photograph of a German tent prisoner of war camp in Wyoming. It would have been not a stretch of the imagination to see something like this in Bowling Green. Now, this is a copy of the lease agreement between the Ohio Agricultural Extension Service and the city of Bowling Green. And I read this, and it is written in Surveyor. So I sent this to the county engineer. And the moment we have all been waiting for, the exact location of the prisoner of war camp in Bowling Green. Now, that yellow up on Poe Road by the railroad tracks was the Heinz Company, and that in red was the prisoner of war camp. Those streets were not there at the time. Wood Avenue, Park Avenue, that neighborhood, that was not there. Today, that is the rugby field at Bowling Green State University, and it doglegs beneath it on Leroy Avenue for a short distance. What is that green box? That was the Bowling Green city sewage treatment. What a better place to put the German prisoners of war than surrounding the sewage treatment center. Now, here's what it would look like today, showing North College Drive and the rugby field today. The Heinz factory is long gone. The sewage treatment factory is farther down the road on Poe Road. It is no longer there today. Now, for 22 years working at the Wood County Museum, people have told me all about the prisoner of war camp, where it was located, what it looked like. And I have determined, researching this program, that they were all wrong. But I got curious. If they are not telling me about the prisoner of war camp, what is it they are telling me? And it is another fascinating story about Bowling Green and Wood County during the World War II era. Everybody has told me that the prisoners of war lived in tin huts on campus of Bowling Green State University. And I was very skeptical of this because I don't think placing prisoners of war, all men, on a co-ed campus would have been a very good idea. These two images are taken from the yearbook at Bowling Green State University, and on the east end of what would have been the football field at that time were rows of tin, shacks. These were not prisoner of war shacks. These were after the war, when thousands of GIs, taking advantage of the GI Bill, flocked to colleges like Bowling Green State University, and the university ran out of housing. These are bachelor housing for students in one big dorm style on the inside. Married housing for married students of former GIs taking advantage of the GI Bill were in a various assortment of campers. And that is a photograph of the university area. There were campers everywhere. This was for married students. Now, people have told me, and I have read, was it 40 or 50 prisoners of war, like people have told me, or was it 600, like the author of that book told me? Let's figure this out. There was an interview of a general manager of the Midwest region for Heinz in the year 1983. He has recollections of the prisoners of war and said that there were between 30 and 60 of them, and they were used to harvest the tomato crop, among other things, and they were kept there in cabins. Now, that is a different story. In the back of the Italian prisoner of war cartoon that I showed you earlier, it says 40 or 50 German and Italian prisoners contracted to work for Heinz in the year 1945. Now, the book that I used, World War II Camps in Ohio, lists where the author of this book got his number. And it says NARA Inspection Report, Bowling Green, 1944, and the conclusion of the camp at Bowling Green State University. What is this? The author of this book went to the National Archives, the prisoner of war reports done by the Defense Department, and that is where he got his number. And trust me, the Defense Department of the United States at that time knew exactly how many prisoners of war there were. If there were 600, they counted every single prisoner of war and reported that. They didn't just say there are some there. No, it could be any number. They knew exactly how many prisoners of war, how many bed sheets, how many tents, and how many spoons were in that camp, and somebody counted them and reported on them and was responsible for them. Now, what is the discrepancy? People's memory. People remember things differently. And I hope you enjoyed that. And the next time that you drive past the rugby field for Bowling Green State University on Poe Road, you can imagine a tent camp with German prisoners of war.